Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its mythology and what it's like to fight in game as well. Now, because there are so many monsters, way too many to choose from, I like to hear your suggestions of monsters that you'd like to see. Whether you just like to see that because you'd like to see how I would draw them, or if you want to hear their lore and mythology, or maybe they're just a cool monster that's not in D&D yet and you'd like to have me make some homebrew stats for them and put them in the game for you. Whatever your reasoning is, I'd love to hear your suggestions, because I can't decide and I like to use your ideas. So if while you're watching today's video, a monster tickling the very edge of your brain and you really want to see that, make sure to put that down below in the comment section so that I can make a video about it. Absolutely tons of you have suggested today's topic, including a former patron from Patreon, and unsurprisingly, my video on griffins was the main source of comments requesting this creature. The first of which was Akav Akaku, so thank you so much for your suggestion. I'm so excited to finally get around to drawing and talking about hippogriffs, the topic of today's video. So without any further delay, let's get started with today's video. Hippogriffs, as the name implies, are a type of, or at least genetically very similar to the typical griffin that we know and love. Do we use genetics in D&D? Maybe genetically is the wrong word. I'm not quite sure how griffins work, but you know what I'm circling around. Similar to the conventional griffin, which is a fusion of a large bird and a mammalian body, typically an eagle's front half with the lower body portion being that of a lion, hippogriffs typically are a hybrid of an eagle fused with a horse. In fact, the hippo part of a hippogriff comes from the ancient Greek word hippos, meaning horse, and the Latin word gryphus, which refers to pretty much any eagle-based mythological creature in the ancient world. Thankfully, the hippogriff is not a fusion of a hippo and an eagle, because I doubt they'd really be able to take flight, although that would be an incredibly deadly creature. Another Monster Monday perhaps. But the word hippopotamus does share the same ancient Greek root word, and literally means river horse, and was likely named by someone who had probably never actually seen a real horse, or never seen a hippo before. Due to the domestication of horses and how commonplace they have been as a part of human society, the hippogriff is generally seen as more of a steed, a mount, a pack animal, or a pet by comparison to conventional griffins. I think I mentioned in the Griffin Monster Monday video that while riding through a city on a hippogriff might be seen as very exciting and exotic, guards will still tip their caps to you as you pass, but riding in on a griffin is considered akin to walking down the street with a direwolf or catching the train with a fully grown lion on your lap. You'll probably get more than horrified looks and are likely going to be kicked out of the city. Hippogriffs have been a part of the game since first edition's Monster Manual, released in 1977, and have been present in every edition since. They lay eggs rather than having live births, with accounts suggesting that their eggs will sell for 1,000 to 2,000 gold pieces because of how brilliant they are as mounts for someone looking for a creature that will aid them in combat or allow them to ride some kind of beast through the skies as well as on the land. They take nowhere near the level of difficulty to train that a griffin might, and there's no moral requirement to ride them, which creatures like Pegasi usually tend to need. They're generally pretty docile, or at least comparatively docile to other predatory creatures that one may attempt to tame because of their equine heritage. While horses are plenty wild themselves and require a great deal of skill, knowledge and trust to tame, they're far more likely to let you ride them than, let's say, a lion might be, so the comparison is pretty sound. Very little is canonically known about their diet, as unlike more conventional griffins, who are purely combined predators, the hippogriff is a fusion of a herbivorous animal and a carnivore. A huge amount of lore is established about the behaviour and ecology of hippogriffs in the Harry Potter novels though, which, despite quite how problematic they are in nature, still holds a very special place in my heart, and if you'll indulge me and allow me to separate the author from the work, then I'll quite happily use some of this information to fill in the gaps that folklore and D&D lore have left open to us in the ecology and behaviour of the hippogriff. In the Harry Potter novels, we're told that the diet of the hippogriff, quote, consists mainly of insects, birds and small mammals such as ferrets. They would sometimes paw at the ground for worms if no other food was readily available, end quote. It is very likely to be an attempt to merge the hunting tactics of predators with the docility that we'd hope to see in herbivores. Personally, I feel like a great middle ground would be to presume that these creatures are scavengers, or even carrion feeders like vultures, who fill an essential niche in nature, and as a result have incredibly strong immune systems and methods of staying very, very clean, despite their diets being seen as something repellent to us. Their stomach acids are incredibly strong, for example, to deal with any toxicity, necrosis or bacteria infested foods that they might eat, and I like to think that the same could be the same for hippogriffs. Perhaps the stomach acids of the hippogriff are highly prized by blacksmiths who wish to quench their tools and weapons in something to strengthen them. Maybe their antibodies are harvested from their feathers and are ground down into powders to make tonics and tinctures that might alleviate diseases. Alternatively, fungi are neither plant nor animal, with the worlds of D&D providing magically enormous fungi in places like the Underdark, and also creatures like the myconids being enormous sentient fungi. Maybe the middle ground between predator and herbivore lies in a diet of giant fungi of some kind. Slime molds are even stranger creatures, and likely inspired many of the oozes and slimes of our D&D campaign worlds. As far as I'm aware, they have no natural predators, so the hippogriff could feed almost exclusively on many different types of oozes that exist in our world. The different species and variations of hippogriffs evolving different beaks, perhaps, of various different kinds, to combat the acidity of these gelatinous creatures. But that's just my headcanon. I'd love to hear how hippogriffs fit into your lore, art, and ecosystem, how they might live, and what they might eat. Hello there. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank all of my patrons over on Patreon for their support. But in particular, I wanted to give a shout out to all of the wonderful patrons who are backing me at the Silver Archfey level. This month you are Nicholas G. Silver, Raptor Dio, Jelly Pig, Duck Quack, Nap in Camo, Jonathan Foster, Benjamin Colburn, Yorick Beast, Ethan Dibby, Skyrush Soul, Nathan Stratton, Amanda and Jake Westfall, Ken Doman, Peter Balfe, Max Schluter, Ryan H., Tim Klima, Steve Harrison, Dan Waterman, Styrax, Colby Monroe, It's Just Avi, Sam Hickson, Brandon Kerr, Bork Boulderbender, Darth Caetana, Trevor Traub, Max Copeland, Oliver Thorvald Mellock, Dominique Jolly, AJ, Tamerling, Aldrin, Christian Palmer-Smith, and Brandon Wilkinson. If you're interested in joining the little community that we have over on Patreon, I'll make sure to leave a link to that down below in my description box. Patrons get access to loads and loads of rewards, like this shout out, but there are also shout outs for every single patron on my monthly live stream. Every patron is entered into a raffle at the beginning of each month, where one person is randomly selected for a character illustration that might get made into a commission corner video. If you're interested in getting a commission, they get copies of all of the artwork that I do each month, which includes the video that you're watching right now. They get Patreon exclusive videos that are about my lore, my homebrew world, and my adventures in D&D. And some of us get to have one-on-one chats every month where we get to talk, and I can do some drawing for you, including things like drawing a commission while we chat. But anyway, I've taken up far too much of your time, but thank you so much for helping me to thank these guys, and I'll let you get back to your video. Cheers! Thankfully, real-world hippogriffs actually have a very well-documented origin, and specifically come from a poem published in 1516 called Orlando Furioso, or in English, The Frenzy of Orlando, by Ludovico Ariosto. In this poem, Orlando, also known in English as Roland, a very real man and an old Frankish military leader who served under King Charles I of the Franks in the 1st century CE, more commonly known as Charlemagne. In this poem, Ludovico Ariosto describes the hippogriff as we know it today and mentions that they are born specifically to be steeds and are the result of a griffin having a child with a horse. He says, quote, "No fiction wrought magic lore, but natural was the steed the wizard pressed. For him a filly to griffin bore, height hippogriff, in wings and beak and crest, formed like his sire, as in the feet before, but like the mare, his dam, in all the rest. Such on Riffian hills, though rarely found, are bred beyond the frozen ocean's bound. Drawn by enchantment from his distant lair, the wizard thought but how to tame the foal, and, in a month, instructed him to bear saddle and bit, and gallop to the goal, and execute on earth or in mid-air all shifts of manage, course, and caracole. He with such labour wrought this only real, where all the rest was hollow and ideal." Hippogriffs are rarely seen in heraldry and historical art by comparison to their more noble cousins. Arthur Charles Fox Davies, an expert on British heraldry who lived in the late 1800s or early 1900s, mentioned that they are, quote, "ugly, inartistic, and unnecessary. Their representation leaves one with a disappointed feeling of crudity and draftsmanship," end quote. And this is a sentiment that I wholeheartedly disagree with, and personally, I think it sounds like Arthur Charles Fox Davies was a bit of an opinionated Golgothra, which is as firm as the YouTube algorithm will allow me to be on the matter. To others, the hippogriff represents love, unity, compassion, and compromise. As a fusion of a griffin and a horse, griffins are famously obsessed with eating horses in particular, so turning that around and raising a hybrid together, displaying love and overcoming violence, is often symbolized through the hippogriff. As a challenge rating 1 creature, hippogriffs don't have particularly remarkable stats. They can fly 60 feet and can gallop at 40 feet, so they are brilliant mounts. From their predatory parent, they gain their keen sight, which gives them an advantage on all perception checks related to sight, which they already have a +5 in to begin with, which is pretty damn good. And they can make 2 attacks per round, one with a 1d10 +3 piercing damage beak attack, and one with a 2d6 +3 slashing attack from their claws, so they are incredibly valuable allies. And if you're a druid, whose DM allows you to turn into monstrosities and beast-like creatures, not just animals, then they're certain to be an absolute favourite. Or if you're a noble paladin who can summon a steed, these guys make absolutely fantastic allies. Now, in terms of my own artistic rendition here, I've gone for something a little bit different as per usual. Usually they are eagle and horse, or griffin and horse, I suppose. But we're told in the description of the hippogriff on page 184 of the Monster Manual that, quote, "A hippogriff possesses the wings and forelimbs of an eagle, and the hindquarters of a horse, and a head that combines features of both animals," end quote, which I've very rarely seen in illustrations of a hippogriff. The 1st edition and 3rd edition artwork looks very, very horse-like, but most other representations, including the 5th edition one, tend to put an eagle's head atop a horse's body, which looks absolutely phenomenal, by the way. It looks absolutely brilliant. That's how you make a really cool looking hippogriff, but I was keen to put some more horse-like elements in the face here, in the facial structure, and basically plonked a beak and avian eyes on a horse's head and then put feathers on top of that, just to kind of see how that would work. Just wanted to give it a go, even if it ended up being something that didn't look particularly right. I made sure to keep the eyes on the side of the head rather than facing forwards, so that this creature would look more herbivorous and less like a predatory animal. But then birds of prey also pretty much have their eyes further to the sides of their heads than most predators tend to. I definitely made sure to give it horse ears. I very rarely see hippogriffs with ears, and I feel like that's a good marking feature that this is a hippogriff and not just an eagle's head attached to another creature's body. And just like the griffin, I wanted to take influence from some other birds. I like the idea of a kingfisher, for example, which is where this colour palette and general face shape came from, rather than having a hooked predator's beak, good at cutting through animals' flesh. The kingfisher is a great dive hunter and a fisher, as the name suggests, and they have these fantastically conical beaks that come down to almost a needle point, so I thought that might be interesting if this creature is diving through the dirt for worms or perhaps is interested in eating fish. Some variety in my types of griffin are always a favourite. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I absolutely love drawing this creature, and I had a great time. So thank you so much for your suggestions. Keep those rolling in. Make sure to add any monsters that you'd like to see me draw in the comment section. Make sure to leave this video a like if you enjoyed it, perhaps favourite it, and share it with the rest of your D&D party, because we are just little hippogriff foals ourselves and would love to grow and manifest into the fully grown hippogriffs that we can be only with your help. And until next time, happy monster hunting.